Welcome back. Well, it's been nearly 3.5 years now since Superstorm Sandy damaged tens of thousands of homes and businesses. Many still try to put the pieces of their lives back together and to find the money they still need to finish repairs. But now, hundreds of these storm victims are getting letters from the government saying they were actually overpaid for their claims and they'll have to return the money that, in many cases, they've already spent. The process is called Clawback, and an intense legal battle is already underway.
I thought that it was just a how you doing? We're just checking in.
This was no friendly letter from FEMA. Liz Treston, after repairing her Long Beach flooded home, told she must repay $4,500.
That it came on the 2nd anniversary of Sandy. That was just, just seemed extra cruel.
She's one of 1,000 storm victims now told the federal government wants payback for duplication of benefits.
I sent in the forms. They sent me a check. I cashed a check. I gave it to the people to help rebuild my house, and now they want the money back.
Lawmakers say it adds insult to injury for victims who in most cases made honest mistakes.
These are hard-working individuals who committed no crime, no fraud.
They might have made an honest mistake in an overwhelming and confusing application process, or, as we're hearing, FEMA might have made the mistake.
Members of Congress are sponsoring a bill to allow FEMA to forgive debts owed by storm victims instead of clawing back money the agency overpaid and charging interest and penalties for lateness.
You made the mistake. You pay the price, not the residents that deserve this money.
FEMA says in the $1.4 billion paid to victims of Superstorm Sandy, only 2% was paid in error.
We want to do everything we can to continue to work with Congress to make sure that we provide needed assistance while at the same time remaining good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
And joining us now is Dan Strafer. He runs the Disaster Relief Clinic at the Torah Law School. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to
What
be
does
here.
your Disaster Relief Clinic do?
Well, the Disaster Relief Clinic provides representation to victims of Superstorm Sandy for a number of different reasons.
How many storm victims do you represent at this point?
Well, for the Clawbacks, I represent about 24 people currently, but a lot of those cases have been successfully resolved at this point.
Right, and we're going to talk about that because people got letters not just from the FEMA organization, but also recently from the state of New York with its Office of Disaster Recovery.
That's correct.
Wanting back tens of millions of dollars from over 1,000 Superstorm Sandy victims. Are you involved in that too?
Well, the New York Rising Clawbacks are a new process, so we're getting people calling in, but the appeals process for the New York Rising Clawbacks is sort of developing, so I haven't had a chance to really go through the appeals process right now, as it's
not
very
all completely set up yet?
If it is, it's just recently set up.
Right, so I mean, and that's kind of been the story of this all along with these agencies. And of course, you can have some compassion and understanding, because it takes a while to put an organization together to meet the kind of complex claims that people have. Okay. But now, so are you advocating on behalf of the victims who have received these clawback letters? And what have you done? Have you had any success in getting that removed from them as a claim from the government?
Yeah. Before I go on, there's really two separate groups of people that have received clawback notices.
FEMA and the state, New York.
Exactly, yeah. There's, so we've been representing people that have received clawback notices from FEMA for about 1.5 years now.
And what have you done about that?
Well, there's an appeals process in place, but we've been strong advocates for changing some of the ways that the appeals process works, because it's very difficult for applicants to navigate the process.
So this is still ongoing, or have you had any success in having some of these clawbacks?
Yeah, we've had a decent amount of success. The clinic has been able to terminate a little over $100,000 worth of debt, which represents about 70% of our clients.
Well, now that's a fairly significant number. That's newsworthy, actually, what you just said. And so what was the reason that they were successful?
Well, fortunately, the clinic was able to make some contacts within FEMA that have been helpful in resolving some of our issues.
So they've been very open to the idea of being forgiving. They have to follow the law. And these laws were put into place after Katrina because of the fraud that occurred down in New Orleans as a result of the aid that in some cases was not properly accounted for.
Yeah, well, there's federal statutes, some of them are in the Stafford Act, that control how the programs that release the grants work. And within those statutes, they list how the clawbacks work as well.
Well, how did these claimed overpayments occur in the first place? I mean, whose fault is this?
Well, it's a number of reasons. It's not just one reason. Most of the time, it's some sort of administrative error.
You mean by FEMA or the state?
The cases I've seen, a lot of it's a misunderstanding or FEMA made a mistake, and the way the program is currently implemented, it doesn't matter whose mistake it is.
Do you think it should matter?
Of course. I represent the advocate, the individuals who receive the letters, so I'm an advocate
I've
for
seen
them.
cases where businesses have given people money. I used to work on Wall Street, and when they improperly or accidentally gave people back more money after a certain period of time had occurred, they just washed it off. They didn't try to get it back. They didn't want to make the customers upset. But in this case, they have to give it back, don't they?
Yeah. If the individual who receives the recoupment notice doesn't do anything about it, eventually the debt gets sent to the Department of Treasury. And at that point, the Department of Treasury will either garnish your wages or they'll take your tax return. They'll get the money back somehow, and it's pretty easy for the government to get your money.
Well, the New York Rising one, the letters that have gone out there in the last week, and that's an ongoing process. They say it'll take a while to send out all the letters. There are dozens of cases where they're claiming that the people were never eligible for the aid that they applied to, sort of implying a little bit that there was fraud on their part. Have you seen much fraud in the cases of people that...
I wouldn't classify it as fraud. It would be, the cases I've seen, it's a misunderstanding, or New York Rising didn't catch a duplication they should have caught at the beginning. So for example, if an applicant received an award for $100,000, but they also had a flood insurance proceed for $30,000, New York Rising on the front end should take that $30,000 away from the $100,000 award
and not have overpaid.
And only give the applicant $70,000.
And it would seem that's something they should have been able to figure out unless the money came in later. But then there were also cases where people got money. They're saying that they didn't really fill out they had already agreed to the terms of Hurricane Irene, the storm that occurred. I couldn't remember the name of the storm that occurred before, where they agreed that they would get flood insurance when they received federal aid. Now, they made a commitment to get flood insurance and then didn't, and then they filed a claim under Sandy. Now, that would be more clearly on the person, would it not?
Yeah. The rules are fairly clear. If you don't have insurance, you basically get one opportunity to receive this grant money.
So they knew full well that they were expected to get flood insurance, and they didn't.
Well, I don't know what kind of notice they received from the program, so I can't really speculate, but I know that is the rule.
Well, you know, one of the things we were shocked by is that, you know, fully half of the people in the area that were deemed flood insurance areas, that you would have to get federal flood insurance, didn't have it. And so there's a big issue about who's supposed to be in charge of making sure that people in flood zones actually buy the flood insurance for when the next disaster occurs. Well, Dan Strafer, we appreciate you coming in and telling us what you're doing on behalf of these clients. It looks very complicated. You're with the Disaster Relief Clinic at the Torah Law School, working on these clawbacks now, not just from FEMA, but from the New York State, New York Rising office as well. Thanks for your perspective.
Thank you.